Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast, where we talk about how to be a more successful multifamily investor with a focus on using technology to boost your business. And now your host, Todd Heitner.
Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Today our topic is all about how to find great multifamily deals. Especially when you're first getting started in real estate investing, especially multifamily, it can be a real challenge finding the right deal that works for you. Hopefully today we can take away some of that stress by helping to understand not only how to find the best deals, but also how to make working with brokers easier and less intimidating. Today I have with me Jonathan Twombly. He's a full-time multifamily real estate investor and the creator of Multifamily Launchpad, which is a private mentoring community for people who want to break into investing and learn the right way without spending tens of thousands on guru programs. Today, Jonathan talks about the most common and effective ways to find deals, the 5-step process to get your foot in the door with brokers, and if you don't have much real estate experience, how to eliminate doubts that a broker may have in working with you. So let's get right into it. All right, so Jonathan with me today. So Jonathan, thanks for coming on. How are you today?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And so I thought today we could talk about finding deals and a really important part of the process. So can you give us kind of an overview of some of the different options then for how to find deals?
Yeah, well, of course, so finding deals is kind of like the hardest part in the whole process of, whether you're syndicating and raising money for deals or just doing it on your own with your own money. It's really often the hardest piece of the puzzle. There's always deals out there. People always show you a deal, but finding a good one it can be tough. And particularly in this market where the number of deals on the market has dropped by like 2/3. So what's on the market is even more limited than before. So having, it just becomes even more important to do the right thing for finding deals. So I don't know if you want me to go into just kind of like the overview of like different methods of finding deals or any particular route, but what did you have in mind?
Yeah, maybe just like the high level, and then we'll kind of get into them in more detail later.
Sure. So, there's a number of different ways to find deals, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. But obviously the most common method for finding deals, and the one that, you're going to use most often, and it's going to work most consistently, is brokers, right? Brokers are the market makers. When you own property, you're typically going to go to a broker to sell your property because they are going to have access to the most buyers and get you the best price. So the vast majority of deals are going to be trading through brokers, whether they're on-market deals or off-market deals. And, there's sort of, I actually break things down into like off-market deals and then like really off-market deals, like true off-market deals. Those are two different things. But so you've got brokers. Then you've got like the direct to seller, direct to owner kind of method where you can try to figure out who owns the property and try to figure out how you can get in touch with them and then hopefully convince them to sell you the property. And the advantage to that is that if you do happen to get one, oftentimes you can get one below market. So you can get a good deal on it. But the disadvantage is that it's really a numbers game. It takes a lot of effort to dig those up. But some people find the effort to be worth it. And then the other, I guess, method the one more is REO deals or bank-owned deals. And REO stands for real estate owned, which is when a bank forecloses on a property, it goes into their REO department. And their REO department's job is to get rid of that thing as soon as they possibly can, because they don't want to, banks are not in the business of owning real estate. They just want to have loans that they're collecting payments on. So they want to turn that back into an asset. When it's on their balance sheet, it's a liability. They want to turn it back into an asset, which means selling it and hopefully providing the financing to sell it, or selling the underlying paper at a discount. So that is also really great way to find really good deals, but it is hard because you have to form the relationships with those REO officers, and preferably you want to form those relationships before you need them and before there's a great deal of distress out there, because once there is a great deal of distress out there, they will be bombarded with investors, and they're going to reject 95% of them and pretty much all the people that they don't know, unless they're from some really established, well-known business. Then I think the rest of it sort of falls into the bucket of networking with people in the business. There are various people who may own property or, may have access to people who own property. Certainly property management companies, they're in direct access with owners. They know, which assets are performing well and which are not performing well. And maybe the owner would be open to selling. Accountants will know that information too. Lawyers potentially will know that information. So those are people that you can be networking with. Really, anybody who's in the business may potentially be a lead for this. You may even, through networking, meet owners of properties, and maybe you work out a private deal with them. But it's, it all, except for the kind of direct to owner, which tends to be sort of through mailings and stuff like that, or cold calling. Other than that route, it really all is about relationships, whether it's brokers or otherwise. So it's a relationship-driven business, and the more people the better it'll be for finding deals.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Great. And so you mentioned earlier about off-market deals, and you said there's off-market and then truly off-market. So can you explain that a little bit? Yeah,
there's off-market deals and there's really off-market deals. So there, I'll tell you first of all what isn't an off-market deal. What isn't an off-market deal is a deal that somebody posts on Facebook and says this is an off-market deal, right? They're marketing the deal, right? So it's by definition not an off-market deal. And people will scream at me for this and say, no, it's off-market. If you're marketing it, if you're blasting it out, it's on the market, okay? Just because it's not a listed deal with a broker. So you find a lot of like wholesalers, doing this. And I guess I forgot wholesalers too. I don't tend to use them myself, but they're not so many of them are really active in the large multifamily space, because most sellers don't want to deal. Most sellers of large multifamily properties are going to get, frankly, really pissed off if they think they're selling you a property and then you're turning it around and flipping it to somebody else, for more money. Just they're not. So, but for smaller properties where it's a more opaque market, and the seller just wants to sell and they're not even thinking about these things, like they don't care. But so I don't really deal with those people because there's just not that much of it going on. But that's another avenue, right? But those people often will be the ones that you see on Facebook who are saying this is an off-market deal. But let's talk about like sort of actual off-market deals. One is when a broker deal, right? Where it could be one of two situations. One is where the seller has told the broker, hey, I want to sell this, but I don't want to do a big marketing campaign. I want to keep it quiet. They may have various reasons for keeping it quiet. They don't want their tenants to find out it's for sale. Or they don't want other people in the market to find out it's for sale. Who knows what the reason is? But for whatever reason, they don't want to blast it to everybody. They want the brokers to hand pick a few sellers that I know are qualified and buy that particular kind of property and just offer it to them. And usually in those cases, you're not going to get a huge discount over the blast sale, the true on-market sale, but you may get a little bit better price for it. And you're often just dealing with less competition. So like your certainty of closing is higher. You're not putting in all this effort to underwrite and, talk with your lenders and stuff for a deal that like you've got this very small chance of getting because there's 100 other people bidding on it, right? Maybe it's 5 or 10 other people bidding, so your chances are higher. It's just better for you as a buyer. Then there's like the real off-market deal with a broker where you have a relationship with a broker and you tell them like, this is what I'm looking for, go find it for me. And they start reaching out to all the owners that they know saying, hey, would you accept an offer? Would you accept an offer? And then you've got no competition at all in that property, except to the extent that there are 5 other people in the market doing the same thing. But the good brokers aren't going to, the brokers may say, oh, I've got two buyers interested in something like this, or they may know that like, hey, you just want to buy 80 unit deals and this other guy wants to buy 125 unit deals. So they're not going to be talking to the same owners when you're dealing with really good brokers. So that is like a real off-market deal. And you've got also a situation where sometimes the brokers take it upon themselves to think like, hey, I think that seller might be interested in selling, and I know Jonathan is interested in this kind of thing. So I'm going to try to put the deal together myself. And again, that was never on the market at all. And then of course you've got like the direct to seller, which is also a true off-market deal, because the seller might not have been thinking about selling until they got your cold call or your letter, or maybe they were thinking of selling, but they just hadn't taken there's a lot involved in selling a deal, and you've got to go talk with brokers and you've got to do all the marketing. So maybe they were thinking about it, but they haven't quite gotten to that point, and they get your communication and they're like, hey, this would just be easy just to sell it to this guy if I can get a price that I'm happy with. So that's the distinction between the sort of off market and the true off market. So like just to make it clear, sort of like the off market deal is the one where the broker is kind of like quietly going to a small market, let's say, and then the true off market deal is really where the seller had no intention of selling until they were contacted by either a broker working on your behalf or you on your own.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And you mentioned about wholesale. And so you said that's typically just going to be smaller deals. Do you about what range of units would that?
I mean, it's hard to say. And it's also like, just to be certain, there are some wholesalers dealing with really big properties. It's just pretty rare that it's happening. It tends to be more in the single family or sort of small multi, like your kind of duplexes and quads. Those kinds of small deals tend to be the ones that are in the wholesalers kind of realm.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And so let's focus then for a little while on brokers, since that's probably what most people are going to be doing. So what are some things we need to know about brokers, and like how happy are they to hear from a new investor?
So it really all depends on how you approach them, right? I think you have to build relationships with brokers, right? That's really the only way to succeed in this business. And the problem is that a lot of people hear information like, we'll go on Google and find some brokers and reach out to them, and then that's how you get started. It's really not the best way to reach out to them, because what often happens is that people who are doing that they're kind of, they've come out of a seminar or they're whatever it is, they're really hot to go, and they don't do any preparation. They don't stop to think about the broker's point of view. And they tend to think of brokers as like a means to an end, not as a person. And then when things don't work out, then they start talking about brokers as if they're the enemy, right? And you'll see this on like places like BiggerPockets all the time, where the way that people are talking about brokers is if somehow like they're the enemy that you have to conquer, or you somehow have to get through, or they're interfering between you and the seller, and they're just, at best they're a necessary evil. They're not. They're making a market for the rest of us, right? They're bringing together their relationships with buyers and their relationships with sellers so that transactions can happen. The thing that you have to understand from the human perspective about brokers is that brokers don't make money unless the deals close. So they have to believe that you can close the deal before they're going to invest time on you. Except occasionally very new young brokers who are trying to build a business, and they may be in a position where they'll just talk with anybody. But I think very quickly they will learn that a lot of people who are just reaching out to them, who are, all full of energy because they came out of a seminar, are not going to follow through. So what you should be doing is investing time up front to develop certain skills and develop, certain what's the word? Not document. Well, documentation is part of it, but also just like you have to basically show that you're in the business. Right. And, create a good impression that you're really in the business and you really know what you're doing. And if you do it right, a lot of times what happens is people are like, brokers always ask me for proof of funds. How do I overcome that? Well, the reason that they're asking you for proof of funds, there could be two reasons. One is because the seller has said, I only want people to deal with people who can prove funds because I don't want to waste my time. That could be one reason. And then if you don't have the funds, there's really nothing you can do about that. The other reason is because the brokers are using this as a filter because they're trying to filter in only those newbies who you may not know what they're doing, but they have a lot of money and they can buy something and they can close, right? The proof of funds question is designed to filter out anybody who kind of looks like maybe they don't know what they're doing, but the broker wants to make sure that they're not accidentally pushing away somebody who really could close a deal. But that also means that you can approach the broker in such a way where you don't create the impression that you are someone who doesn't know what they're doing, who needs to be asked the proof of funds question, right? And I have actually a whole training around this issue, but I'm going to take you guys through it right now, on a high level, so you kind of understand how this works. But you can totally create relationships with brokers and approach them in a way that makes them just assume that you know what you're doing, and then you can avoid the proof of funds question a lot of the time. I'm not saying it's foolproof. It won't work 100% of the time, but hopefully it'll work enough of the time that it'll make a difference for you to start getting some traction.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I look forward to hearing that. And so walk us through it then. What are the steps then for finding brokers, and how do you?
So I mean, the step for finding the broker is, there's a couple things. You can Google them. That's fine. So as a way of identifying brokers, Google is fine. That's not the issue. The issue is really how you approach them and what you do before you approach them. So I have kind of like a 5-step process that has worked for me. I mean, I don't need it anymore because I'm established, so I can just call up a broker and it's, but when you're starting out, this 5-step process really helps you just get your foot in the door. And the 5 steps, we can go through them in a little more detail, but the 5 steps are: first, you've got to get enough education so that you sound like you know what you're talking about. Like if you've gone to like a seminar and you're like, that's not enough. You really have to kind of steep yourself in this for a little while to really be able to know all the important concepts and to speak the talk, right? The next thing that you have to do is set yourself up so that anybody who Googles you, right? This is what, when somebody reaches out to you and you don't know who they are, the first thing you do is like Google them, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're going to go on LinkedIn or whatever. You want to put yourself in the other person's shoes and make sure that when someone Googles you, the impression that they're going to come away with is this guy is in the business, right? That is step 2. Step 3 is you need to form a team of people. And that doesn't mean, I'm not talking about partners in your business. I'm talking about the professionals you work with who, if you can communicate the fact that you are working with them to the broker, are going to make the broker think, oh, this guy is in the business, and also make them, hopefully those are people with reputations such that the broker is going to say, oh, Jonathan is working with this guy. Oh, okay, then he must be legitimate, right? Because that guy would only work with someone who is legitimate. And then the next step is you need to prepare a set of materials that shows, who you are, your background, your business, the kinds of properties you're looking at, who this team is, et cetera, right? Get that all ready to go. And then the very last step is reaching out to the broker. And the way that you want to reach out to the broker is get a personal introduction. Personal introduction is probably the key to most things in life that you want to accomplish. But with brokers, it's really the key. The difference between cold calling a broker, cold emailing a broker, and getting introduced by one of those professionals on your team is just night and day. That will solve about 90% of your problems right there. Frankly, you could even flub some of this other stuff that I've already mentioned and get the personal introduction and get better results than you're getting right now by trying to cold email people or cold call them. Walking with a warm introduction is just gold. And then before you actually meet them, so now we're sort of getting, I said it's a 5-step process, there's a couple more steps, but before you actually meet them, then you want to send them those materials that you put together, right? Because that's going to answer a lot of their questions. And it's also going to reinforce in their mind that that you're in the business, that you know what you're looking for. But if at all possible, you want to meet them in person rather than doing a phone call. Phone calls will work fine, but there is nothing like saying to somebody, I'm flying into your city for 2 days and I would like to meet you while I'm there. People will make time to meet with you when you say that. I mean, just as an aside on this point, I live in New York City, but there was a period about 20 years ago where I moved to Boston to take a job, and I wasn't really happy there and didn't really know anybody. So I was coming back to New York City almost every weekend to see my friends. And like the friends who, you go 6 months without seeing when you're both living in the same city because you could see each other anytime. Like basically every weekend I'd call them up and say, hey, I'm driving down from Boston, let's hang out. And they would always say yes, because so there was something, both scarce and unusual. They're like, oh, he's only here for the weekend, even though I was here last weekend, the weekend before that. Like there's just something about like somebody saying, I'm traveling to where you are. Can we get together while I'm there? That creates a scarcity about you being there that makes them want to meet you. So, that really, really helps a lot if you're able to do that. So I don't know if you want to go through the steps in a little more detail or not, but
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's do that. So you mentioned education being the first one. So let's take a moment to thank our sponsor. When we return, Jonathan will go into more detail on each of those 5 steps to get your foot in a broker's door, as well as how to eliminate those doubts that a broker may have in you, especially when you don't have much real estate experience. So stay tuned. Do you need funding for your multifamily deals? Well, we've partnered with one of the biggest names in multifamily lending to help you get a loan for your next deal. Just go to apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding and fill out the short contact form, and our lending partner will get in touch with you. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding.
So I don't know if you want to go through the steps in a little more detail or not, but
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's do that. So you mentioned education being the first one. So
So, I mean, look, there's lots of ways you can educate yourself. There's tons of books out there, mentoring programs. I mean, I have a mentoring program. Everybody has a mentoring program. You can go through one of those programs and really learn, but it's really important to really know what you're doing before you start talking to brokers. And that, I think at a minimum, that means learning the lingo and learning how to underwrite a deal and learning the market. So you're not going to a broker, when the market cap is 5, and you don't go to brokers and say, hey, I'm looking for a 9 cap deal. They're just going to laugh at you, right? And they're not going to take you seriously. And I see this, frankly. I run a big Facebook group, and I see this in my Facebook group where people post like, hey, I'm looking for, big 6 market deal, trading at a 10 cap. Who's got one? I'm like, no one's got one because it doesn't exist. It just showed you just proved yourself to be, ignorant about the market. So you don't want to do do that in a Facebook group. It's fine. Don't do that with a broker. They won't take you seriously. All right. Mm-hmm. So that's really, really important. The second thing is about, making sure that anyone who Googles you is going to believe you're in the business. There are certain things you can do. First of all, you got to take care of your LinkedIn profile if you've got one. It's got to have something about real estate on there. You may have a job, and I know people have said to me in the past, like, oh, what if my boss sees this? You can still do something to your profile to make a broker believe that you're at least like a serious part-time investor, right? You don't have to be a full-time investor. You just need to be a serious investor who can close a deal, right? So that doesn't mean that, like if you work at Google, that the broker is going to say, oh, he works at Google. If you work at Google, but you can show that you're in the real estate business, then you want to show that. The other thing is, and this is right up your alley, and this wasn't planned, but have a website. Like, website is one of the best ways to show that you're in the business. People don't go to the effort of putting together a website unless they're serious. And I think it's really, frankly, at this point, it's very difficult to claim that you're in business and not have a website. Right? That is really, really important. And another critical thing is and you're going to have to do this anyway if you have a website, register a domain and get an email address with your business name on it, right? Don't reach out to a broker with, Jonathan Twombly at Gmail, right? Todd Heitner at Gmail. Like, all that does is show this guy can't spend $14.99 a year to get a branded email, right? He's not really in the business. So when you're in a situation where every impression is important, why let that be the thing that makes somebody dismiss you as not in the business, right? So get the website, get the branded domain. Heck, at least, I mean, not to throw you under the bus, but like get the branded domain at least. Like even if you can't get the website, just go get yourself branded email, right? Don't send it from AOL or Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail or whatever else is out there, right? Mm-hmm. So that's part of step 2. Part of step 3 is you want to put together a professional team, right? And that is your accountant, your closing lawyer, your property management company, maybe engineers or architects, maybe not quite as important, but certainly those kind of 3, because now the reason for those is like what I was talking about before, especially if they're local, right? And you want to have them be local if at all possible. Maybe not the accounting firm so much, but the lawyer has to be local anyway. Property management company obviously has to be local. And mortgage brokerage firm. You want to have those on what's going to be at step 4 on your documentation, because for 2 reasons. One is that it's going to show, again, the legitimacy, right? It's going to show that you're really in the business. And it's also going to show that, like, hey, if I'm a broker and I show you a deal, you're not now scrambling to find a lawyer, find an accountant, find a property management company, find a mortgage broker. Like, you're all set to go. You just have to make a couple phone calls and you're ready to move, right? If you need a credit partner, if you need somebody to do the balance sheet for you, put them on as a partner in your business, right? Also, if you do run into the proof of funds issue, that person may be able to just give you proof of funds, right? Even if they don't ultimately give you the money, they can just show that somebody has money, right? And that's enough. But you want to have those people like documented so that when you show this to a broker, they're like, oh, okay, this guy is ready to go. But the other, probably even more important reason for having those people lined up ahead of time is that they're the ones who are going to introduce you to brokers, right? They're the ones who have the reputation in the local market that's going to be able to say to the broker, hey, this is my client, please talk with them, right? And no broker is going to be able to turn that down. If you have an introduction from like a respectable property management company in the market where this property manager says to the broker, this is my client, he's looking for deals, they can't turn that down. They can't turn it down because their reputation will suffer with that property manager. They want to please that property manager, right? They have to keep things smooth. It's, whatever. They're not going to turn that down, right? So that's what's really important. Next, you have like a deck that you put together. It doesn't have to be very long, but it should include a few important pieces. Your bio, if you have partners, their bios, that list of people that you're working with, what kinds of properties you're looking for in a fair amount of detail, right? And the other things that I think put in there that really distinguish you are if you have a list of due diligence materials, like what you need for initial due diligence. So that, because I think most starting out people don't know what they need for due diligence because they haven't thought about it that much. And this shows the broker that you actually understand how to evaluate a deal, right? So you should have your initial materials in there. Now, one thing about setting up this deck, the way most people set up their decks is wrong. I mean, in business, in the whole world, which is that they put their team last. And the reason that that's wrong is because when somebody gets a deck, the first thing that they are thinking about, well, who the hell is this person? They have a doubt in their mind about the credibility of the deck while they're reading it until they find out who the person is. So oftentimes they will flip to the back first to find out who this is before they read the rest of it. And what you should do is have an executive summary, like one paragraph right up front. Then the very next thing should be you and your team. And the next thing should be who you're working with. And then you get to like what you're looking for and stuff. And that will psychologically create a glide path for whoever's reading it. And then, as I said, the last thing is that personal introduction. After you've gotten all that other stuff out of the way, then get that personal introduction from your team. And if you can't get a personal introduction, you can try going in cold, but you can also try to manufacture a warm introduction. And the way you do that is by getting on LinkedIn and figuring, well, first of all, you could get a warm introduction if you get on LinkedIn and you find who you know that knows this person. The reason you should do this is because, and this has happened to me, you may get lucky and find out that you actually have like a personal friend who knows this person rather than somebody in the business. Those are even better for warm introductions, frankly, than somebody who's like a property manager in the market. If you can find, or Facebook, maybe you can find this too. If you can find a personal friend of theirs to introduce you, like that's like golden. That's like the golden ticket right there, right, for introductions. But if you can't find any connection, then try to like reach out to them on LinkedIn first and just establish the connection with them. Most brokers accept a lot of LinkedIn invitations. If you've got some real estate hook, and this is another reason to have the real estate on your LinkedIn profile, if you have some real estate hook on there, then they're going to accept, they're more likely to accept your invitation. And once you've got that connection with them, then you can try to build it, before you actually reach out to them and propose a meeting or talk about deals. But that's the process. As I said, if you want to go deeper into this, I have a course just on this, very inexpensive, but you don't even need the course if you just follow what I've just outlined here.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. That's awesome. And so, and like when you find a broker, I mean, I'm sure that you must have some kind of criteria too for deciding, like, is this a broker I really want to work with or that I want to have a relationship with? So how do you kind of evaluate that and kind of qualify the broker too? I mean, they're looking at you and evaluating you, but how do you evaluate them?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's going to be, well, if you're talking about large multifamily, there are very few people in the market, right? So they are what they are. And they're usually, if they're at that level, they're all good, so it's not such an issue, right? I mean, you just need to get one of these people to get you a deal. And what will happen once you close a deal, then all the other brokers are going to start calling you anyway. So it's really just that first deal that you need to get established. If you're dealing with like smaller properties, I think, unless you're talking about like hiring a buyer's broker that you want to work with or kind of like really working in partnership with somebody, I don't think it matters that much as long as they have properties to show you, right? And I think if they're part of any kind of established, brokerage, they will. And oftentimes they post these things on their website, their personal websites. But you can make it an interview question if you do get to talk to them. Like, hey, just tell me about what you're working on. I do think also, this does remind me of another point. Like when you are taking that initial meeting with a broker, if you can, before you go to the meeting, look and see what they have on their website, like what deals they've closed, what deals are on the website right now, just so you can kind of drop some hints that you've done your homework. And I wouldn't ask a cheesy question like, "Oh, I just saw you close this deal. Like, tell me about it." Like, that's a little lazy. But make it clear that you can say to them, "Hey, I saw that you just, closed this deal. That's kind of the thing I'm really looking for. Like, I like that deal. I wish I had seen it sooner. I wish I'd been in on that." That's like my, you want to give them something to point at too, which I think is really important. You don't want to go in and just say, "Show me deals." You want to go in and say, "I'm looking for this deal size, this range." Don't say 120 doors. Say, "I'm looking for 80 to 125 doors. I'm looking at, $8 to $15 million price range. I'm looking at, for B properties or C properties or whatever it is." You want to give them something to shoot at because it makes their life easier, but it also makes you seem more professional rather than just saying, "Hey, just show me good deals." So what the hell is a good deal, right? So the more specific you can be, the better.
Yeah. And you mentioned initially just finding brokers that you wanted to contact. And I mean, but some of them maybe only deal with small multifamily. Maybe you're looking for something bigger or vice versa. So how do you go about determining that this broker would be somebody that has the kind of deals that I'm looking for?
Well, because you sort of look at their website. It's kind of limited, right? I mean, there are not a whole ton of brokerages around the country dealing with these bigger properties. There are a few really large ones that are national, like CBRE and Marcus and Millichap, and some others that everyone's familiar with. There are also some regional ones as well in the market. I think when you start Googling, it becomes apparent who they are. You can sometimes there'll actually be press releases in local papers about the stuff you can look for to find out who the players are. You definitely, again, you want to ask that network. That's why you want to build a network first, right? Because they'll tell you who they are. I think it's a little bit harder to find brokers for the smaller properties because at least I haven't really seen like sort of specialty brokers in, say, 25, like the under 50 unit space. Maybe they exist, but I haven't found them. I think a lot of those properties tend to be a little more scattershot in who they get listed with. So you maybe just want to, if that's what you're shooting for, just know more brokers in the market, right? Just try to establish more relationships so that when they get one of those deals in the door, they're going to think of you. And obviously another piece of this too is that you got to keep these relationships warm. You have to have some way of communicating regularly with people so that they remember that you exist. And that could be as simple as just, every couple of months, just shooting them an email saying, hey, how are you? Was thinking of you, just want to let you know we're still looking for X, Y, and Z. Please think of me when you've got one, to, putting together a newsletter that you send out once in a while. I wouldn't, I send out an almost daily email, but that's really aimed more at people who want to learn about multifamily and my investors. I don't include brokers on that. They don't, you don't need to include them on that, although some of them have signed up for my list anyway. But I mean, for brokers, I would say, if you touch them once a month or so, that's probably plenty to let them know that you still exist.
Yeah. Okay. Just kind of keep in touch,
just be top of mind. You want to be top of mind to people. So when they find a deal.
Yeah. Okay. And then when it comes to brokers taking me seriously, what about if a person doesn't have any multifamily experience or maybe even any real estate experience? How do you address that, or how do you?
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody has got some kind of experience in something, right? And you can play that up. I mean, there's some things that are fairly obvious. Like if you have some kind of professional accreditation, like doctor or lawyer or accountant or whatever, that by itself tends to go a long way. If you don't, but if you own a business, that helps because people will just sort of assume that you can translate your business skill into something else. If you have none of that, then try to find something to hang your hat on. Like if you own some property already, it's better than not owning any property, right? Even though saying, oh, I own a couple single family houses, it's not going to be enough for a broker to think you can make the leap, but it's better than not having anything, right? So when you're writing your bio, say for instance, in your materials, you want to try to craft it as best you can to kind of create the impression that your experience up until now is setting you up for success in real estate. I wouldn't want to say like you do it like a resume per se, because you're not trying to get a job. You're just trying to establish some credibility. So, you can talk about even like when you establish your business, how long, if you've got the business set up and you've got the website and stuff like that, you can say we're established when you're established, like, just do the best you can at kind of creating the impression that you are in the business without overkill, right? And don't make the mistake too of like, don't talk to the broker the way that you might talk to somebody who doesn't know anything about real estate that you're trying to get as an investor. You don't need to educate the broker about real estate or about like your strategies necessarily. But you do want to, like I said, kind of create the impression that you're in the business.
Yeah. Okay. And then you said that, having those steps in order before you contact the broker reduces the chance of getting that proof of funds question. But what if you do get that? How might you handle that?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the funds, it might be tough to handle, right? You could, if you're doing a syndication, you could tell them like, hey, we're syndicating the deal. And for some brokers, that might be fine. They might want to know a bit more about your track record in syndicating to make sure you really can close the deal. But if you, I don't think you'll run into this problem as often if you follow the approach that I laid out. You can also sort of create the impression that you've got the money. That's like if you own a business, right? They might think, oh, he owns this business, so he's got the money, or you're a lawyer or a doctor or what have you. If you're not in one of those sort of like jobs that already have the association of wealth with them, it might be a little bit harder. You might run into this problem. You might frankly have a few situations where you're just at the end of the road, right? Because like I said, it also might be because the seller wants it. And then there's really no way around that. But if you're worried about this, then the thing to do is go and find a balance sheet partner. If you're doing bigger real estate deals, you're going to need one anyway if you don't have the net worth for the loan. So rather than scramble later to try to find one after you've got a deal, go get one now, and then just ask that person to just give you a screenshot of a bank account that has the funds in it. It doesn't obligate them to actually provide the money. And there's no way that, if once you show that to the broker, no one's going to circle back with you and when you close the deal and say, oh, hey, did the $1 million that just got wired into escrow, did that come from that guy nobody cares, right? So it doesn't matter, but you may need somebody who can do that for you, right?
Yeah.
But as I said, if you follow this approach, it's going to happen less often, right? It's just, it will happen sometimes, and when it happens, you just may be out of luck. But it really will, if you are able to successfully create the impression that you're in the business and you can close, then they'll just assume that you're in the business and you can close. But then you got to close, right? Because you're going to have one chance. You only have one chance to mess this up. Like if you don't close your 10th deal, no one's going to care. If you don't close your first deal, at least maybe nobody else will hear about it, but that broker is going to be wary of dealing with you again. So make sure you can close. Okay. It's great to be able to get the deal, but you got to have the money to do it too. So.
Yeah, makes sense. And so you mentioned the materials that you send to a broker. Would you include like a sample deal in that so they can kind of see like what kind of deals or not?
No, just list what you're looking for.
Okay.
Just give them, just describe what it is that you're looking for, the criteria you're looking for. I think it's very helpful if you are sending that out to, have a logo, go on 99 Designs or Upwork or one of these other places where you can get a logo designed for you, put that on the cover of your deck that you're sending out, right? Make sure that make sure your contact information is on the deck. It's simple things people forget about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's in there so that they have it, right? When they're looking at it. Business cards too. Like I think for a lot of people who are like, millennials and Generation Z and whatever they are, they're like, oh, business cards, nobody needs, but people still use them. And the less other people are using them, the better it is when you use them because they create an impression. It's something physical that someone can hold on to. That's like, oh yeah, there's that, it could be months later. They're like, got this pile of business cards and they're flipping, oh, that guy, right? So that won't happen if you don't have a business card or if you're just relying on them to remember that you emailed them this time and that they have your email in their contacts now. So all these little things kind of add up. And also like, who's going to create if you don't like who's not in the business has a branded business card with a branded email address on it, right? All these little things just help you create the impression, and they're not that expensive, right? Mm-hmm. Getting emails, getting a logo designed can cost you $100. Maybe for a good one, maybe you need to spend $500. It's not a huge investment. Getting the domain, $14.99, right? Getting business cards printed up, $20, right? This is not, the way that I look at this is like, if you're not willing to spend $1,000 on your business, you're not in business, like you have no business being in business, like that is a low risk to take to be in business. You have to invest something. It's that you can't do this all for free. And anyone who tells you can do it all for free is lying. There is some cost associated with this business. If you're not willing to invest it, then like where are you going to get $1 million to close a deal? Like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's all these little things add up to like a big part of the impression that people get. So
Absolutely.
even if the person's not consciously thinking, oh, they have a logo, it's just the impression they get. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so let's say things go well. You get a broker that says they agree to send you deals, and they send you a deal. Then what do you do next then?
Yeah, it's really important to communicate with the brokers about the deals they send, right? If you like it, obviously, you're going to put in an offer. But if you don't like it, tell them why. Say, hey, look, I underwrote this deal, and I just want to make sure that like what I'm seeing is real, because what I'm coming out at is this price that's way below what the asking is. So is it because I'm missing something, or but you want to communicate with them. And if the deal doesn't work for you, tell them that too. Tell them, hey, I underwrote the deal and it doesn't work for me because of X, Y, and Z. And that's important because it shows them that they just didn't send a deal out to you and then you just ignored it. Like you processed, you underwrote it, you thought about it, you tried to make it work, and you can't, but you want to see more, right? And that it helps build the relationship. So that's very important. Don't be a black hole, right? Make sure the brokers are hearing from you when they're sending you stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine if they don't hear anything at all, you may stop getting anything from them.
Absolutely, you will. So you want to communicate with them. And don't be afraid to tell them the deal doesn't work. They're not going to be offended, right? Their feelings will not be hurt. They want to know because it helps them also understand what you're looking for, and it helps educate them about you, helps educate you about where the market really is. And what you don't want to do is come across as unreasonable, right? Like I said before, I need this deal to be at a 10 cap and it's a 5 cap market. Like that don't be unreasonable. But if you come to them and say, look, I can't get to this asking price because of X, Y, and Z, and also I have to pay my if you're syndicating, I have to pay my investors and I need money left on the table for me. And like brokers understand that. That's part of the business. So they're not going to have their feelings hurt.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing that I've heard people complain about a lot is that it's hard to find good deals where the money, where the numbers make sense. So do you have any suggestions for that? Like where you finding?
I mean, look, it is a tough market, and it has been a tough market for a long time. I don't know really what to tell you other than to be patient. It is very frustrating. I know people who, used to look at 100 deals to find one. Now they're looking at 500 deals to find one that works. And you may not have the capacity. I don't have the capacity to look at 500 deals. Like, you have to be a big shop to do that and have people working for you. It is difficult. I think one thing maybe to be looking at, although this is going to be tough in the execution, but if you can pull it off, be looking for the real distressed deals, like the real, 50% occupied, going into foreclosure, really, unfinanceable kind of deals. Because if the deal is financeable with traditional financing, it's going to get snapped up by, somebody who's going to overpay. So if you're really looking for deals that really make sense, you may have to dig a little deeper and to find, the diamonds in the rough. The thing that you shouldn't be doing is changing your underwriting to make a deal look better. That's just the road to perdition right there. But and it's tough. People are stretching, and they stretch a little more, and they stretch a little more, and they stretch a little more, and they're like, oh, okay, the deal works. But they've stretched so much that, the deal that they underwrote is not anything like the deal that they're buying. So you have to be careful of that, especially now.
Yeah. Well, I think even for people just to know that is the situation today. It is hard to find the good deals, and it's not just them. They're not doing something wrong necessarily if they're not finding them.
Yeah. And frankly, I mean, I tell people this all the time. People come to me and, Jonathan, like, what am I doing wrong? I can't find the deals that work. And what I'll say to them is essentially, that's great. I'm really happy to hear you say that to me, because if you were looking at all these deals and you were saying, wow, look at all these great deals, they're everywhere, that would mean that you really don't know anything about underwriting at all. The fact that you're coming to me and saying, I can't find anything that works, shows that you are actually doing the job right, and that you're turning down all these deals because they don't fit your criteria. So if you're not finding deals that works, well, like, welcome to the club. This is where we are right now. And, but it means that you're being critical. It means you're underwriting properly. And, you just have to keep on pushing through. I mean, it's tough, but you just got to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until you get lucky and find one that does work without you stretching the deal.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And maybe we could just touch briefly on this. We talked earlier about the possibility of reaching out to sellers directly. I know you said that's not something you really do. Can you just tell us kind of a brief overview of why that's? Yeah,
it's a real numbers game or just luck game. And I know people who have done it successfully, but they haven't done it successfully by sending out one mailing, right? They employ a team of cold callers in the Philippines who are just on the phone all the time, getting 1,000, getting 999 rejections and then finding one deal, right? Or they're sending out mailing campaigns, month after month after month, because it's usually not, if somebody is going to respond to a mail campaign, it's usually not the first letter they get that they're going to respond to. It's like the 10th letter they get that they're going to respond to. And so you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money to make that work. And if you don't have if you're not deep-pocketed enough, you're not going to get there. Frankly, if you have that much money to spend, I think a better investment is go start a podcast, get it professionally, produced, pay somebody to market it for you. And then in the podcast, tell people you're looking for deals and you're looking for investors, and you'll start building an audience that way. And you will, this hasn't happened to me personally because I haven't actually done this, but people that I'm close friends with have told me that they will get deals occasionally because of their podcast, because they let it be known that they're looking for deals. So people bring them stuff. Or with a meetup, if you do a meetup and you do it consistently, and consistency is the key to everything, right? Whether it's a podcast or a meetup or running a Facebook group, if you're doing it consistently, your network grows and then people will start bringing you stuff, but you got to put it out there that you're looking, or else they're not going to just volunteer it. So let people know. But I think those are probably more effective ways than just emailing, unless you're committed to emailing. Sorry, not emailing, sending letters, right?
Yeah.
With a mail campaign, you have to be committed to doing that for months, and cold calling, same thing. You got to have a team of people doing it for you to really be effective.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing that. And so we've covered a lot of really valuable information today. Really, I especially appreciate those 5 points you shared for kind of really eliminating a lot of the doubt that a broker would have before it even becomes an issue, like clearing that up. So thanks for sharing that. So what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you then?
Well, there's a number of ways. If you are interested in investing with me, I only deal with accredited investors, but if you are accredited and you would like to invest with me, then please go to twobridgesmanagement.com. It's Two Bridges spelled out in MGMT for management. But if you Google Two Bridges Asset Management, it'll pop right up. If you are interested in learning from me, the best place to go is multifamilylaunchpad.org. And if you go to multifamilylaunchpad.org/ultimate-checklist, you can get my ultimate checklist to buying your first 100-unit deal with other people's money and getting paid to do it. Or you can also, if you want to go deeper into the topic we covered today, I have a mini course at multifamilylaunchpad.org/deal/. So multifamilylaunchpad.org/deal/. If you go there, you can take a deeper dive into the topic we covered today for a very low price. It's $47, I think. So that's those are the ways to get in touch. Oh, and finally, there's my Facebook group, which is Multifamily Investment Community, which is a totally free Facebook group. Just only value, no solicitations, no deals, no nothing. Just free education.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Well, I'll be sure to include those in the show notes too, so everybody can find those if they didn't get it all written down fast enough. So. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Today, we talked all about how to find great multifamily deals. To help you even more, we put together a free resource you can download called How to Find Multifamily Deals Resource Kit. It includes a sample script for talking to brokers, which is incredibly helpful, some of the best articles and podcast episodes about finding deals, and even more tips about talking to brokers and finding deals that most people are not looking at. Download your copy for free at apartmentinvestorpro.com/find deals. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/find deals. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. Also, visit our website at apartmentinvestorpro.com and connect with us.